Hey everyone, how's it going? So I am going to take a look at the GPX Moto website, the pricing of the bikes, talk about the Chinese bike aspect, and take a look at some of these other bikes like KTM Gas, Raju, which is the Gas from like 2012, like the one I have. Using that motor, which is a bulletproof engine, and Yamaha. So first, GPX Moto. So you come to their website, you go motorcycles, and you scroll down, and I bought the TSE250R 2021.5. And it starts at $5,100. I'm going to round it up because it's a silly penny, right? $5,100. And of course, there's delivery. You just do no setup and it's shipped to you. So $5,400. And you get in, you can ride it as is and do all that. Depending on your state and OHV tags and all that. OHV tag is $25.25 here in Colorado. To get it plated and titled. Well, if I got it titled but not plated, it would probably be cheaper, but I went ahead and got it plated as a street bike just by walking in, giving them the MSO. They then turned around and gave me the tab and the plate. I talked about it in another video recently, and it was that easy. I paid roughly probably $400 and something to get for the taxes and the plate and all that. So I have closer to $5,800, let's say, into just getting the bike and riding the bike. So $5,800, a bike for me. And that's shipped to my door, and I had to put it together, which is kind of fun. I mean, it's different, and I would do things differently on the next one. I was doing a lot of just amateur stuff, is just put it together and let's ride it, because I figure that's what most people would do. Don't do that. Actually take the time and blue Loctite bolts and maybe change certain bolts out to lock nuts versus the just normal nuts they have on that tend to vibrate off. And just go through stuff. There's no hurry. And it makes you appreciate paying somebody $200-300, $400 for a setup fee when they have to do it, because it takes time, it takes energy, and they're making sure everything's right. The known things they know about at a dealership, they address that when they put it together. So, don't argue about spending the money, like $250, somebody said, for their dealer to put it together. I was like, that's really not much money. So anyways, this is the bike. It's a copy of a Yamaha DT230 engine, which is more of a European engine. From my understanding, the GPX crowd down below, please leave your comment, and you can explain to the people exactly. People know exactly, like, this engine came from here and the whole pedigree. And so Chinese company bought licensing to produce this old Yamaha engine, which is a bulletproof engine. They seem to be producing the engine just fine. It's probably produced the same quality as it was for Yamaha. It might even be made in the same factory. I don't know. And that's the weird thing about the Chinese stuff, A lot of our stuff, GoPro, the GoPro Media Mod, my headphones here, all this stuff comes from my phone. Comes from made in China. Most of it's all made in China. Now somebody's gonna be like, that phone's not made. Most phones are. I don't know if that one is particularly, but you get my point. So when somebody says that bike is a cheap Chinese knockoff, what do you mean by cheap Chinese? Because we don't live 10, 15, 20 years ago. We live now where the Chinese are the one they're making the iPhones. They're the ones producing the computers, the TVs, the monitors, your speakers, my camera, my Logitech camera here I'm filming with. They produce all this stuff. So I don't know what cheap Chinese actually means when somebody uses that word. It makes no sense to me. Now you might be able, Well, why can they sell a bike for so cheap? Because obviously, if Moto GPX is selling this bike for $5,400 shipped to you, they had to pay shipping from China, blah, blah, blah. The factory's making money. GPX making some money. If they have a dealer selling it, they're making some money. Everyone is making some money along the way. Not necessarily rich by low volume, but high volume. It all adds up. 1,000 here, 1,000 there. It keeps adding up. Or even if it's $500, whatever it is, they're making money. Each component's making money. So we're not. It could even be cheaper if the factory actually sold it direct. And I don't mean to say that in a negative light to GPX Moto, because they're actually doing a lot of inside engineering to say, hey, factory, that petcock, we really need that in a different location. It's easy to break off, or let's get that made out of better metal. Surely we can do that. And they're working with the factory to do all that. So you don't get many importers with these cheaper products that are trying to do that. And they're mainly cheap because advertising. KTM probably spends $10-20 million a year on just advertising, maybe more. I don't, with all their racing programs and this and that, and they're, sponsoring various races and their name plastered everywhere, and magazine ads and, YouTube videos and media bikes and all this. All that's advertising. So they're probably spending buco bucks, millions upon millions of dollars to maybe hit the right person that will say, you know what, I'll buy that KTM. It's kind of like throwing a dart and throwing a dart at a dartboard, and wherever it lands, well, unless you're a good dart player, of course. But like putting up a newspaper, throwing the dart and being like, I'm going to work there. Just the randomness. It's the randomness of the advertising, and they spend so much money in doing that. Whereas they're not spending money, so they don't have to recoup those costs. I think they're sponsoring a little bit with some racers, but no big names, because that's the thing. A pro. You take any of the pros out there. I don't even want to use any names, but you take a pro, and they're making a living doing it. So not only are they riding a free motorcycle or two or three or four, depending what they need for the race season, and all the parts that go with it and the tires that go with it, and and then the gear, which is totally separate from the bike and all that, they're also getting paid by all these companies. So if Husky or KTM, because they're all the same, or Gas, same, sponsor a rider, it's not a sponsorship of here's a free bike. It might be in some cases, don't get me wrong. It might be in some lower level classes, like here, we're providing the bike, but we're not giving you much other support, but you're getting a free bike to ride, right? And then we might get some feedback from you, but that bike is being seen in those circuits and stuff. And it's a good thing, and it's a way to advertise the product. The pros, though, they're making money. So, if, let's say, KTM wants the top level pro in the U.S. riding enduro or endurocross, like my shirt here, I'm guessing, and I don't know, but I would guess they pay pretty dang good. We're probably talking like 60, 80, 100,000, depending on some of these pros, plus all the gear, that. And maybe it's not quite that high, but it's probably that high when you factor in then the gear sponsorships and any other sponsorships they have that go on top, because not only do they get the free gear, whether it's Climb, Fox, Fly, they get the gear, plus they're getting a paycheck, and they might be doing some other stuff to get a paycheck. So all that piles onto each other for like probably a lump sum that probably a six-figure, $100,000 a year job, if not more. I don't know 100%, but it's enough that they buy nice houses and drive nice cars and still do nice things, right? It depends how far they take it in their selling ability. Well, GPX Mode doesn't have any of that. So if they sponsor a lower end rider, let's say they were to sponsor me if I raced and they gave me a bike to race. That would be the highlight of my day, right? I'm getting a free bike to ride. Now you might be like, well, it's a GPX Moto, you're not going to come. Well, if you're a good enough rider, you put a Cody Webb on this bike, he's going to outshine people on KTMs because he just has mad skills, or a Chris Birch, or a Bolton, or any of these people. You put them on one of these bikes, they have skills, then they're going to be able to ride it like no one else. That's just the fact of it. So if you buy a bike because of a racer is on that bike, that seems kind of silly to me, because why? You're not going to ride it like that. So what makes you think because they can ride it like that, because they have mad skills, that you can? You can't. So we have a bike here that's $5,400 that is more than adequate for most people. So far I've shown that it's very reliable. The engine's been reliable. The bike in the whole has been reliable. The only issue I had was a blown fuse. I changed out the Chinese fuse to one made in the USA, and I haven't had any more problems. I wish they had a skid plate on it here, like an aluminum one, because I've dinged up the pipe. But that's me riding boulder fields. The bike has just worked. I've had no issues. Now you say longevity. Well, we don't know that until a year or two down the road, right? So I can't say if this bike will be able to continue to operate like new in 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years. I don't know, and that depends on the rider and how much abuse they put one of these bikes through. But however, because it's a GPX Moto, let's say that engine, let's say, I get 4 years out of it. Well, I go over here at Crate Engines, and whatever newest engine they have, let's find the pit bike engines. Here we go. We got a 233 air-cooled, a 250cc GPX Moto water-cooled. That's a 4-cylinder. And, here's the 2-stroke complete engine kit, $2,000. So, people will pay like $1,000 by the time you refresh a whole engine. You can buy another engine, just $2,000. You buy another engine and have a spare engine and rebuild, take the old one out, rebuild that at your leisure, and put a new one in right away and keep your riding and not have to worry about it. $2,000 just for an engine. I imagine they're not making a whole bunch on these type of things because, they have to ship all the way from China. But the point is, I want to see you do that with another bike. You're not going to be able to. So then we go over, we have a 58, what did I say, 5,800? That's what happens when you have a bad memory. Okay. Yeah, after shipping, we said 5,400. So we go over to KTM here. So we'll say a 250 is what it would be like, because there's nothing in between. Although this would be more powerful, probably lighter. It's going to have newer components and technologies, but some of that doesn't translate into longevity either, because they're trying to make the bike so light that they're shaving material off areas that would make the bike live longer, have better longevity. So we scroll down. What his base price is $10,000 plus, we'll just round it up to $500 shipping. Easy math here. So $10,500 plus, you got to pay tax. It's a more expensive bike. Tax is going to be more. Assuming you could get this plated as easy, you probably have to go through inspections because of how their MSOs are written, but maybe not. And, let's just say, for argument's sake, that's another $500 to keep that the same. So you got an $11,000 motorcycle here. $11,000 that you're going to drop on the trail. It still doesn't have an aluminum skid plate just like the other. It still doesn't have a lot of stuff I've added to mine. Because this guy said, wow, like me adding stuff to it is a big deal, but he's comparing like a used. He mentioned something about, well, I bought a 300 for $8,000. I forget which year, but it was a little on the older side. And right now is a bad time to talk about prices for motorcycle used because they're going way too high. I mean, that's for all of them. But if we, and he was like, well, the GPX is not going to keep its value. Okay. Let's say in 4 years I go sell the bike and the bike is worth $1,500. Yeah, maybe your KTM, because it's after everything was said and done with taxes, plating, to have it the same standard as the GPX that I bought. And I'm not talking about all the accessories, because then you factor all that in. This is like a $15,000 bike, right? So let's not even go there, right? I probably, versus the stuff, I probably have $1,500 into the GPX, still cheaper than buying this. But he's trying to compare used, like paying $8,000. He said $8,000. I wish I could remember what the guy said he bought in the year, but whatever. These people are, loyalists. They're loyalists to a brand. They leg hump a brand. I personally have never leg humped a brand. That's why I own a gas. That's why my XR650R I'm giving away, a Honda. I have no problem buying another bike. I bought a Chinese bike. I don't leg hump any brand. I bought that mainly to review, but I actually like it enough that I'm kind of like sticking up for it and pimping it, because I've had no issues with it. I'm not getting paid to say this. I bought the bike. I got a little bit of discount, but I bought the bike. Just like I would haggle on anything I buy. So you might say, well, okay, how about gas? Well, I looked it up. They have an EC300, and it's $9,600. Okay. I mean, that's a lot of money. And, go back to the whole, he's comparing apples to apples. So I could probably pick this up used in a few years. I said 4 years for like $1,500. Right now, the used ones are actually going for an okay amount of money. But let's say, 4 years, it's still running fine. Obviously, I'm going to have a lot of wear on it because I ride my bikes, but I sell it for $1,500. Yes, the guy that bought the KTM because he spent $11,000, he's going to probably sell that for, $7,000-8,000. I would guess, right? It seems like a good return, but when you think of the money he lost, he possibly lost $3,000, maybe $4,000, depending what he gets for it. Because remember, he also added bikes are going to come with extra goodies, so that doesn't tend to keep the prices high. It just makes it more attractive to buy traditionally. So he still lost a huge sum of money, lost almost enough money, even if we just say $3,000 lost, to buy a new bike in that amount of time. To me, that just seems crazy that you would think you're trying to rationalize that you bought a used bike for $8,000. The first person lost $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 depending on the accessories they put on it, which, if it was $5,000, basically buys a new bike and from GPX Moto. And you as the second owner got a bike for $8,000. Well, I could buy this bike, also old, if it was used. If we're comparing apples to apples, let's say for $1,500 with aftermarket stuff on it, maybe $2,000 with aftermarket stuff on it. Otherwise, I could strip it off and sell that probably for more. But let's say $2,000. Well, you paid $8,000, I paid $2,000, so I saved $6,000. That's $6,000. I could go buy a new engine for $2,000 and still have saved $4,000, and it'd be like a fresh bike. Yeah, the frame would be kind of, beat up, swing arm, and this and that, but still $4,000 saved. So who came out ahead, really? You might think you did, but I don't think you did, actually. But anyways, gas, $9,600. And, it's basically a KTM now, so hard to, really look at this and be, impressed with it. I mean, look, let's flip back and forth. Different side covers, but it's a, obviously the same engine, so same bike. different forks and stuff. You know, they're trying to make this kind of the lower rent bike, but all of the, well, granted, this is a 250, so let's see, so 10 for that. Let's go up to here. Still the wide. $10,200 plus $500, so almost $11,000 plus. Then if you want to get it all tagged and plated, you know, you're probably into low 12, like 12.1. That's a lot of money versus same engine, gas, different, slightly different components, but basically same bike. You got to be stupid to buy this when you can buy this for a lot less. Basically have the same thing because you got the same engine. But anyways, I digress. Or you go with Raju. This is Gas sold the engine technology to these guys. So this is like my 2012 Gas. So you could just, a normal person could just get them MR Racing, Mr. Racing. I don't like the MR part of it. It must be something in Spain. So still a Spanish bike. $8,900. That seems more like it. You know, sub 10. Also go through the hassle, plating and taxes. You know, it pushing up there to what would that be? That would be roughly $9,400 if we say $500. Or you get the Mr. Pro, which, yeah, that gets up there, but it says it's like top shelf components and everything. So you buy this, it's basically as much as a KTM. So people will be like, well, why would I get this? Well, this brand has been around 20 years. It's not like it's a new brand. And the Gas engine is bulletproof. So it would be interesting to try one of these in the flesh to see what exactly. It would be fun to try both of those side by side, right? A lot of people don't like TPI either, so that could be something that turns people off, because I think this is still carbureted. It says we're here Keihin Carb, so I'm assuming Keihin Carb over here. And yeah, you know, I would go over this. I would get this before I got the KTM. I would, because it's different and it's basically my gas, and I could just probably swap over. If something broke on the new one, I could swap over. If it was still good on the old one, right, I could swap it over. And I might be able to swap over a lot of stuff like my skid plate and stuff. So I'm very interested in this bike. But they're up there in price now. I paid $6,800, something like that, brand new for my 2012 Gas EC300 with the E-Start, which overseas was called the XC300, Cross Country 300. So of course, then you got the Yamahas, you got the YZ250X here. You know, that's their 2-stroke, or you want the 4-stroke over here. 2-stroke's only $7,600. You probably can get it cheaper, I would imagine, because they're not as high of demand as like the KTMs. Everyone thinks if they ride a KTM, they're going to be a pro. You're not going to be a pro. And, you know, I could look at Shercos and stuff, but they're all around the same price range. The bikes I would choose either this guy, but I need a headlight, the stator, and I would put the E-Start on it. That's where this is lacking. The E-Start headlight and that stuff. Or I would get one of these. Here, let's click it. Learn more. I think that looks pretty sexy, don't you? Don't you all? Look at that. 300. So it comes 200, 250, 300. It's a nice bike. I mean, that's basically my bike. They changed how the starter is. It's like this versus mine's like that. But I don't know. Mine works. I've never had a problem with it. I changed out the Bendix, and ever since it's been even easier to start. Look, Nissan brakes still. So name brand components. I think I would choose this. Why? Because it's different. I like being different. And I could probably swap over my smart car over onto the new bike. So that might be other plus too, right? You stay with a brand where you could use your current parts, like my fancy Force accessory skid plate. I could probably transfer that over. I would traditionally like to have a gas, but not if it has KTM engine. If I would actually probably just buy a KTM if I was going to do, because this has better bits and stuff. I would just get this. If you're going to go all out, I would get that. But to throw this bike on the ground repeatedly and damage it, throwing 10, 11, $12,000 on the ground, oh my God, that just hurts to think about it, you know? Yeah, it might be, I don't know what makes something the best. Is it the best? What, just because you pay a lot for a pro to ride it and they win championships and then that makes it the best? Is it all the engineering they put into it? Is it changing the design every single year? Do you really need to do that? I'd rather have a bulletproof engine than always have updates and updates. To me, that just means you've never made it right to begin with, and you have to keep updating the same engine over and over again, and thus charge more and more money. Lighter weight doesn't necessarily a good thing unless they use lighter weight because they used a different manufacturing process, some type of forming, tube forming or something, you know. Hydro bending, is it? Or, you know, using different methods that would make things lighter, or exotic materials. Maybe you make a titanium frame. Why not? You know. Really, for most people, I would say 99% of the people out there on trails would get by just fine with a GPX, and they would only spend around this much money, maybe some accessories. So let's say another $1,000. They have $6,500 totally into their bike that they can ride year after year after year, get the same enjoyment as if they had a KTM, but they have that much more money in their pocket. People buying these aren't necessarily broke. There are people that realize, well, I only ride once a month, or I'm getting back into riding. Do I still like riding, or I'm new to riding? Will I like this sport? So don't poo-poo people that buy these. I can buy any single bike that's up here. I can buy multiple of them. But I chose to buy this, A, for YouTube videos, because it's interesting, it's different. And surprisingly, I didn't know I would come this way out of buying this bike, saying, look, maybe you should consider one of these because they're not that bad. They're not that bad of a bike. They work, they run. Yeah, every bike has its downfalls. So does this. Well, it's made in China. I can't buy anything made. Half of the components on KTM are made in China. You don't think it's all made in Austria, right? That bike would probably be a $20,000 bike if every component was made in Austria. Just like if we had a motorcycle, Harley Davidson decided to make this bike, this type of bike, an enduro bike, it'd be a $20,000 bike, especially, or more if all the components were made in the U.S. It's never going to happen, people. You're not going to get a 100% made in the U.S. product anymore. So do I want to support Austrians that buy up every single brand and slap the same old engine in every single thing they have? No, not really. I lived in Austria. Their bikes also cost a lot because they have strong unions, very strong unions, and that's why they get like a month or two off a year, for vacation because they have strong unions. So I personally, I think it comes down to this bike is ideal. You want to be different, get something like the Raju. I promise you, they're using the old the gas engine technology, and I've proved that's bulletproof. Look how one top end and since 2012 on my gas EC300, and it just keeps on going. It's not even worth for me to rebuild it because I'm just like, it keeps going. Why? It's not worth much money. Or if I wanted to also stay with like a Japanese brand that's known for quality, I just go with the YZ250X and get that, And if you're comparing new, it's like, I think my choices would be You know, this, they're also coming out with a 300. See how that is. Or, you know, the Raju or Yamaha. I think those are my bike choices that I personally would consider. I don't think I would consider a KTM because something about throwing a $12,000, $10,000 to $12,000 motorcycle on the ground. You know, I throw this on the ground, it's bad enough, but it's like, oh, okay, yeah. You throw 12,000 and you're gonna drop the bike. Pros drop the bikes. You just don't see that because that's not in their footage. You know, they don't leave that in. But they drop bikes too. You know, but their bikes are also free, so it doesn't matter if they damage it. You know, they drop it and crush that pipe in for the 10th time. Oh well, you know. So KTM gives them another one for their 20th time, or they break a dented rim or whatever. Oh, KTM just gives them another rim, or maybe another rim sponsor sponsors rims or something. You know, it's not a big deal for those pros. They break the muffler. Not a big deal. Not a big deal, or whatever. The plastics. They have a whole van full. So, anyways, I just get that off my chest because, you know, some people get ridiculous about the whole cheap Chinese thing. I'm still trying to figure out what is cheap Chinese when we all have freaking smartphones and computers and TVs and all these vehicles are made, their components are made in China. You know, so all these components are probably coming out of some of the same factories that make a lot of the components for all the other bikes. And let's be honest here, China actually produces more motorcycles than any other country. They have some of the largest producing manufacturers of motorcycles and the longest, as far as being around. They have the longest of being around companies out there producing motorcycles and moped engines and scooter engines and stuff. Yes, there's some flaws in China, and a lot of that has to do with their manufacturing mentality, which I've kind of talked about in vlogs, and I'm not going to talk about it right now because that's its own subject, really, and rant. But it's a different type of mentality, and once you understand that, you realize, and once you understand, well, if an iPhone can be made in China, then why can't other phones? Why would you knock this motorcycle over your $50,000 car that probably half its components were made in China? I mean, let's be honest here. Okay, anyways, that's enough ranting. Have a good one. Take care and stay well, my friends. Bye.